Okay, I've had a little bit of sleep and a lot of time to think about the movie, so let's really get into it now. Welcome to Star Joes. I'm your host Ryan, and this is my spoiler video for Star Wars The Last Jedi. I did my non-spoiler review. You should see it popping up somewhere around here at this point, probably over here. But check that out. If you have not seen Star Wars The Last Jedi, this is your last warning because I am going to be going in depth. I'm going to be spoiling the hell out of everything in this video. So do not watch it past this point if you have not seen the movie and you do not want to be spoiled. You cannot blame me for anything beyond this point. So the spoiler warning has been shown. So here we go. All right, so I've had some time to digest the movie, and I've had some time to really think about different things that happened. And the more I've had time to think about it, the more I really love The Last Jedi. I started thinking about how does it compare to The Force Awakens, how does it compare to Rogue One, how does it compare to the original trilogy, all of that type of stuff. And I gotta say, the more I've had time to think about it, the more I like it so much more than The Force Awakens and Rogue One. I loved those movies. I really loved those movies. I thought they were done really well. I thought they both had different flavors to them and everything else. But this movie, for me, brought it to a next level. And I'm going to get into some of the reasons why. There's been a lot of bashing when it comes to this movie, just people hating on it and everything else. I really feel like there's a lot of people that either A, want to bash it, B, want to compare it to the original trilogy that they hold in such high regard that nothing's going to ever be any good. In fact, I'll flat out say it, if you don't like Force Awakens, Rogue One, or The Last Jedi, and I mean like you didn't like all three of them, you've seen all three of them and you're like, I hated all of them or I didn't like any of them, stop going and seeing any of the new Star Wars movies, because you're not going to like any of them at this point. One of those movies you should have at least liked. I mean, I'm not going to get into a whole rant about that, but it just gets very frustrating when I've had friends that I felt were Star Wars fans that have, every time a new movie came out, they hated on it. And I'm seeing it with The Last Jedi as well. And I'm like, just stop going and seeing it, because you're not helping the fandom, because you're just bashing it. I get it if you don't like something, and there's definitely going to be things I'm going to mention that I did not like in The Last Jedi, but overall, I thought it was a fantastic movie, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized what a fantastic movie it was. So I'm going to talk about, I'm going to get the things I didn't like out of the way. So I talked about in my non-spoiler video, there was a whole scene with a whole story element with Finn and Rose, and they went to Canto Bight, which was like this gambling city on this one planet. And I saw a lot of other people really didn't like that either. I will say, on thinking about it more, it didn't last as long as it felt like it lasted in the movie. And what I'll say is, go see the movie a second time. And I say that because the first time you see any movie, it feels like it goes by pretty slow, because your brain's soaking everything in. Like, think about when you go for a car trip somewhere. The first time you're going somewhere for the very first time, it feels like it's taking forever, because you're just wondering where you're supposed to go and how you're supposed to get there and everything else. And then when you're driving home, it feels like you got home way faster. It just felt like it was faster. And that's because you knew where you were going. Same thing happens with movies. The first time you see a movie, things seem to go slow. So those parts that felt like they were slower parts feel really slow. And then when you see it a second time, you realize they weren't as slow as you originally thought. So I do think the Canto Bight section could have been done way differently. I think it's been done a little bit better. But I do think it didn't drag on as much as reviewers have been saying it dragged on. And I think we kind of put that in people's heads, like, oh, watch it, this part's going to really drag on. That being said, I do think it definitely could have been done a bit differently. I know they were trying to go for like a cantina type scene, or like Jabba's palace type scene, or even like Maz Kanata's bar, which I also think in The Force Awakens could have been done a bit better. I know they were going for that cantina feel. This felt even less of the Cantina feel because it didn't really feel like it had unique music to it. The games they were playing looked like just normal Vegas games. I feel like there should have been something unique to Star Wars when it comes to gambling and stuff like that. Everyone, of course, is like all dressed up in like tuxedos and stuff like that, which I kind of also feel like there would be a different look for Star Wars. I don't know. It just felt too much like Earth with just alien heads on some people and stuff like that. So, and I know the message they were going for in that as well is like there was a little bit of a message of, well, there was probably a lot of message of animal cruelty and things like that, which I'm okay with. Like some people have said like that felt like it was being preachy, but it never came across as preachy. It just came across as like, look what people are doing, and now we've released these animals, and they're grateful and everything else. So and they were being abused. And I don't think anyone that has seen abuse of animals can really say, well, yeah, you're getting preachy by saying they need to be released. So I kind of feel like it's doing what Star Wars has always done, which Star Wars has always had life lessons to it. And there was a lot of that in this movie, which is the other thing I really liked about it. We got some, yeah, you could call them cliches and everything else, but I kind of refer to them more as archetypes in a story. We had lessons like failure is the greatest teacher. We have all that we need. Like at the end, Leia says we had all that we need. Rey was, wanting to know if we have, we don't have what we need to start a rebellion. He says we have all that we need. It's a small band of rebels. That's what started this whole thing, and Leia knows that. Just things like that. And there's so many in this movie where it's just those little lines that really make it Star Wars for me. They give you that life lesson, but they don't do, in my opinion, they did not do it in a preachy way any more than they did in the original trilogy. So I really liked that. Getting back to Canto Bight, that's where we get introduced to Benicio del Toro's character of DJ. And I watched Good Morning America, and he was a guest on there, and they asked him what DJ stood for, and what do the initials stand for? What's the character's actual name? And he said he wasn't going to disclose it, but if you're really paying attention, the name is given in the things that he says as a character. And I was like, okay, well, let me think about the things that he said. And if you really pay attention to the movie, there's one part where he tells Finn, be free, don't join. Don't join DJ. It's the only thing he says that represents DJ. I don't think that's an accident. I don't think Benicio del Toro is like reading into that. I think that's really what it is. I feel like especially knowing the type of character he is with him being like, working both sides and everything else, I am almost positive that DJ is an alias for his character. That's not his real initials, that's not his real name, but he has decided he is not going to join either side. He is strictly business, and you see that in his character. So DJ, to me, seems like it would stand for don't join. And like I said, that totally plays into his character. In fact, there's a part in the movie when he goes away that all of a sudden we then see an AT-ST start shooting at the First Order stormtroopers. And for a second there, I thought that maybe that was DJ returning to help out Finn and Rose. That's not his character. That's not his nature to do that. But that would be the cliched thing to do, is that this character who is out for himself and everything else gets that heart of gold like Han Solo did and everything else, and comes back. And they didn't do that. What they did is ended up being BB-8 like hijacking the AT-ST. So the DJ character can still be that character that he was. And I don't know if anyone else thought that he was in that AT-ST, but I just felt like, he came back to save them, and like, wait, no, he didn't. It wasn't him. So I thought that was really cool to go against what you might expect to occur, and that happens also throughout this movie. So I mentioned in my non-spoiler review that there was characters that we met who seemed like they could be bigger characters, and then we never really got to explore them because things happen, and really what happened was these characters died. So I don't think that was any shocker as to what I was meaning there. But we have the A-Wing pilot, Tally, who Poe seemed to connect with, and like awesome teammates and everything else, and she gets killed. But she seemed like an interesting character. I'm so hoping that we either get her in a book or in a comic or something like that, where we get to explore that character a bit more. There was also Paige Tycho, who was Rose's sister. Like, we didn't get to see much of her, and she didn't really say, I don't even know if she said much of anything at all, but she seemed like she was an important character. She seemed like somebody you cared about, and then you see her die. And that was one of the things this movie really did also, is it showed real stakes in this war, in this struggle. I mean, we had cruisers being destroyed, of entire units of people and everything else. Another character that we lost was Vice Admiral Holdo. She was awesome as a character. She was a character who I thought, wait, is she the traitor? Is she been communicating maybe through a droid or something like that? Because I saw a droid near her at one point. I was like, is she sending messages and that's how they're tracking and all that type of stuff? And I was just like, is she setting them up for failure? And then you find out that she's not. Like, that she had a plan all along. And that was another nice twist to this, was it's so easy to do the cliche, the typical story arc of the hotshot pilot of Poe Dameron realizing that the leader is wrong and is taking him down a bad path, and he's going to step in, and he steps in, and we find out that no, he wasn't wrong. He was the one that was wrong. He was the one getting in the way of what the plan was. And actually, if he had not stepped in and worked with Finn and Rose, they would have never gone off. They would have never met DJ's character. They would have never brought him back, and he was the one that told the First Order about the escape ships getting away. They were cloaked. They would have never, the First Order would have never known. They would have thought they destroyed the command ship and that the rebels were done, and the rebels would have been fine. So had Poe not stepped in and done all this type of stuff and just trusted in Vice Admiral Holdo, they would have been fine. So that's so typical Star Wars as well. Like, think about the escape pod that the Imperials decided not to shoot that had R2 and 3PO in it. Had they shot that, the movie would have been over. So I thought that was awesome. You know, and then she sacrifices herself, which is one of the most awesome scenes. There was 3 scenes in this movie that really just wowed me, like totally blew me away, because they were just like these epic, picturesque moments. And one of them was when Vice Admiral Holdo took her ship and sent it through light speed right at, Supreme Leader Snoke's command ship. And it just split, and there's this light going, and it split some of the Star Destroyers near it and everything else. It was so epically amazing. There's also the scene where Kylo and Rey are both going for Luke's lightsaber, which was originally Vader's lightsaber, or Anakin's, and they're both reaching out for it, and it's floating there in the middle, and like you just see both of them there straining for it. Like, that looks like it should be a poster right there. And then the most amazing scene, just the scene, and this refers back to the non-spoiler video. I mentioned that there was a scene that reminded me of Dark Empire, when Luke is standing in front of all the updated AT-AT walkers. I don't remember what they're called, but they're like the guerrilla walkers. He's standing there and he's looking up at them. That reminded me of Dark Empire, and that is just, again, just an epic shot, just an amazing shot that was done there. So we had all of these like little things going on. Just some other subtle things I noticed was when Finn went into the Falcon at the very end to get a blanket for Rose, there's the Jedi texts are in that drawer. At least it looked like them. We also had Yoda, which is a huge spoiler. So please, if you're seeing this and you didn't watch the movie and you're still watching this anyways, please don't spoil it for anyone else. But Yoda appears as a Force ghost, and there was one thing with Yoda that I didn't care for. There was times where he seemed like he was a puppet, and that was awesome. He looked very reminiscent of old Yoda. There was times where he seemed like he was CG. And I don't know, it was something with his lips and his coloring of his skin and things like that. And I know he's kind of bluish hued because he's a ghost, but there was just something off about him at times. Not all the time. Really watch some of those scenes. Some of the scenes he looks perfectly fine and looks awesome. And then there's times where I'm like, yeah, that looked a little too off for me. So, and I'm a huge Yoda fan. It's my favorite character in all of Star Wars. So I was really paying attention there. But he talks with Luke, and if you can get past like the changes in how he looks and everything else, he acts like the old Yoda from Empire Strikes Back. And really, Luke acts like Yoda did when Luke met Yoda in Empire Strikes Back. Luke's been secluded for a while. He's gone a little crazy. So like when he's drinking the one beast's milk, green milk or whatever it was, like, and he looks up at Rey, he looks a little crazy. He's getting the fish. He looks a little crazy. He Yoda did the same thing to him. So I feel like there's that connection there and everything. But it was still done organically. It's still done well. It wasn't just a repeat or a copy of Empire Strikes Back. So really liked that. Like I said, I liked seeing the text inside the Falcon. I feel like that's going to play a factor later. Kind of plays again into what Leia says, we have all that we need, and Rey doesn't know that she has all that she needs to start the Jedi again. There's a lot of symbolism in this movie as well. So one of them is when we get some expansions on the Jedi powers, the Force abilities, and we get where they can actually communicate with each other and actually see each other and everything else at far distances, which I thought was great. And then that can actually create contact and all that. So I thought that was pretty awesome. That was really cool. And then, but we get some symbolism with that because at the end, Rey closes the Falcon door on Kylo, and it's, she's closing the door to him. Like, I tried reaching out to you, and look what you've done. And we have symbolism where Kylo is holding the gold dice that were Han's on the Falcon, and they disappear because evidently Luke never actually brought them because of him being not actually there. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But they disappeared on him, and to me that was symbolism of Kylo has lost everything that he was. Every aspect of him being Ben is gone now. He is now Kylo Ren. But Luke also says no one is completely gone. No one is gone for good. So there's some hints of that too. And again, it's that life lesson. Like, just because you've gone so far doesn't mean you can't come back. So there was a lot of symbolism there. There was, the kid with the broom who reached out, and I was like, oh my God, did he just grab it with the Force? And yeah, he does. It's a very short distance, but he grabs it with the Force, and it's so just matter of fact for him. And then he holds it out in front of space, and it looks like a lightsaber being extended. And so, like, that plays into one of the big things I want to talk about in a little bit here. So one of the big things here that I really loved with this movie, and I might as well just go ahead and get into it because this is really the big thing that I really noticed with this, and why I don't think this movie deserves the hate that it's getting. This movie changed a lot of things, but it also went back to what Star Wars always was. So we have Rey, who we find out what her lineage is, and all we find out is that her parents were junkers, and they sold her for drinking money. And I actually think that's pretty awesome, that was her background. I don't think it's awesome that her parents sold her. I think it's awesome that was her lineage, because we kept thinking that she's a Skywalker, we kept hearing she's a Kenobi and stuff like that. Think about what that means. Like, if she was, that almost means like she was destined because of her lineage to be somewhere. That's kind of like, well, you're only going to be able to save the galaxy or save the universe or save the planet or save your city or save your family if you're destined to do so, if you have the genetic structure to get you there. That is so not Star Wars. When we go back to A New Hope, we have a farm boy. Now, yes, we find out he has lineage later, but we have a farm boy who went out and saved the entire galaxy. Saved the rebellion. He was essentially a nobody. He was just like all of us. He was the guy out there, and he just wanted to make a difference. That's all it was for him. And then even though he had the lineage, you go back to his father, Anakin. Anakin was a slave, and he tries to take the right path. And now, granted, it goes dark, but that's to show that you can go either way. You're going to be at crossroads in your life. So Rey coming from nothing and having this ability, I think is amazing. That's awesome. That means that anyone out there, no matter how bad your situation is, you can make a difference. That's what the message is. And this isn't like some, social justice, feel good type of thing like that I'm trying to preach here. That's what Star Wars was. And that's one of the things that always made it special to me, was like, you can come from nothing and make a difference in the world. And that's what Rey's background is. Look at other characters we've had also. Finn was in the Imperial, with the First Orders, and he was a janitor there. So then he goes from that. So even in the First Order, he was given a duty that other people tend to look down on. But Finn was doing that job, and he realized that what the First Order was doing was wrong. He got out of there, and even though he wanted to just run away, he becomes a leader. He becomes a hero. He's willing to sacrifice himself for a cause. All of that is just awesome. And then we have the boy at the end again, who is basically a slave. He's sweeping things up, and he's got this power inside of him. He's got this ability inside of him. He's in tune with the Force. And we bring the Force back to what it was. It's this thing that binds us all together. I love that we went back to that instead of the midichlorian stuff. So we have all of these things happening. And again, it's that message that you could have the worst upbringing. You could have the worst background. You could fail multiple times, and you can still come back. You can still be that light for everybody else. You can be that spark that lights the fire that takes down the First Order. So I really loved that. I thought that was absolutely amazing. Couple of last things I just wanted to mention. But that was the gist of everything there. But a couple last things I wanted to mention that I noticed. One was that Luke appearing at the end, if you watch closely, his feet, when they touch that ground, never leave red. And that's why you see the ones, I believe that's why you see the one soldier come out and he's walking and you see red at his feet, which at first, I will admit, I thought he was bleeding. I thought he was a wounded soldier. I was like, oh, is that blood going on in there? But it's just, when you step on the crystals and everything else, the salt and everything, it turns red on that planet. Luke never, when he walks out there, he never turns red. If you also notice, he never actually engages Kylo Ren. His lightsaber never clashes with him. There's no contact whatsoever. So keeping that in mind, also pay attention to Leia when Luke shows up. Luke arrives, they sit and they talk, and then Luke leaves her the gold dice. And when he touches her, she gets a very surprised look on her face. And I think she knows he's not actually there because he never actually touches her. Those gold dice are never actually there. She can feel them and they make noise because of the whole connection thing that we saw earlier with Kylo and Rey. But, there was some realism going on there. But I think she realizes Luke's not actually there. And there's just this moment that you'll see. So I thought all of that was really cool. The one thing I wanted to mention too in the spoiler, because I mentioned the non-spoiler and I said I would mention it here, something that they've never done in Star Wars before is there is actually flashbacks in this one. They're telling a story and you actually get to see what happened in the flashbacks. But I think it was done really well. I think it worked for the story. And I thought it was very interesting because you got to see Luke's perspective when he's essentially lying. You get to see Kylo's perspective, and then you get to hear Luke telling the truth of what actually happened. And each time it was just a little different. There was a little subtleties to it of what you actually saw. So tell me what you guys think about some of the insights. I've been watching reviews now that I've seen the movie and everything else, and I didn't hear anyone mention the DJ thing with the, don't join. So I thought, it'd be a cool thing to share. But I really haven't heard anyone talk about the fact of Rey's lineage and how that is so Star Wars. That works for Star Wars. Because Star Wars for me as a kid was one of those things where I was like, wow, I can come from nothing and make a difference. And that was one of the life lessons that I got from Star Wars. And I feel like that's what this movie is doing too. It's giving that life lesson. It's subtle, but it's there. So tell me what you guys think. Is there something else that you remember from the movie that was just like, yeah, this was a really cool moment? Or if you're someone that didn't like the movie, why didn't you like it? Like, what about it specifically did you not like? Because I really want to hear specifics. I've seen general posts of like, I don't like it. I hated it. I thought it was disjointed. I thought it was this. I was like, I really want to hear what from those that didn't like the movie, what you didn't like about it. I'm not saying you're not entitled to your opinion. You like what you like and you don't like what you don't like. But I really want to hear what people didn't like about the movie. And those that did like it, did this provide any more insight to maybe go see it again? Because again, I think a second viewing really kind of lets you pay attention to those subtleties and everything else. So I've gone on long enough. I apologize for the long videos and everything else, but I just had a lot to say in this one. I'll be getting this out probably in the next day or two from me recording this. I want to give people the weekend to really digest and see the movie and everything else. But I appreciate all the support. I love the fact that you guys are enjoying the videos. Keep letting me know what you'd like as far as additional content in the future. I will have some comic reviews coming, I promise. But this was an important one to do. And with that, I'll go ahead and close by saying the Force will be with you, because knowing us is half the battle. Take care, everyone.